Welcome to day 4, number 77 with the man, Frank Scalish.
7-7. Can you imagine?
77, lucky number 7. Hey, I got a question, Frank. When's that number 7 coming out? We just gotta get the weekly show, and that's a running joke along that. But it is coming down. If you do, this is the last recorded show of the bunch. I'm wrapping up a 3-week jaunt, pretty much up and down the entire East Coast. So we will be back with a live day 4 to wrap up the month of July. Some really good content that has come out over the past month. A little bit of offshore structure fishing, then a little bit more offshore structure fishing, specifically with crankbaits on deep timber, and then diving in. You know, you like to go offshore mainly, don't you? You're an offshore guy, but we slid up and talked a little bit about shade lines, some offshore shade lines too, and
Right.
a little bit different show today.
Yeah, I get a lot of people when they DM me, they're like, a guy will go like, "Hey, my son and I were out fishing, or my daughter and I was out fishing," and so I started to realize that I had 4 children also, and I took all my kids fishing when they were younger, and so I thought it would be kind of a good show to bring the kids in the mix, because we talk a lot about some serious stuff on this show, and we talk a lot of detail and you know actually how to fish and so on,
Mm-hmm.
but we never really touch upon what does the kid need in the boat. What does the child need? How do you bring a child into this sport and get them hooked on the sport and not mad about going fishing? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I made mistakes along the way with my kids and learned valuable lessons. So I thought it would be we could actually get into that, you know. The biggest I could go right into it right now if you want. I mean, the
Well, I think
biggest
we should bring in one of your kids then.
all
We've
right,
had
let's bring
Frankie on
them in.
before. There's Josh Scalish right there in the Scalish family living room.
I just want to take no responsibility for this child. Um,
What's up, Josh? Thanks for being on BTL. I've never officially met you in person. Frank's talked about on the show. Heard stories. So big athlete.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. And college baseball right now, and I fish when I can, but right now baseball is pretty much the only thing that I can do. Baseball and work.
which is good,
Hmm.
which is really good.
Frank's all about getting some work done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. No,
So yeah, not to derail. I just wanted to bring Josh in, but I thought this would be a great show to do then, because like
yeah,
we did the deep structure a couple weeks ago, where you were talking about having an 8-foot rod and having to make a super log cast and doing it. We basically joked like, hey, if you got a buddy who doesn't know how to cast and doesn't have an 8-foot rod, you basically turn back and say, hey, sit down and enjoy the show.
right. Open up a sandwich while I catch these. Open up your PB&J from Black Coffee and wait until I catch all these.
Yeah.
But no. So we'll touch on this taking your children fishing thing for a minute, because I took all of my kids fishing a lot when they were really little. Like, I'm talking about bringing toys, their toys to play with. Frankie I had in my bass boat when he was in diapers and could barely walk. Um, and so when the kids would get old enough to be in the boat, I have some real funny stories about taking these guys fishing too, by the way. So I'll unload a few of them. But I made a big mistake in the beginning of this. I wanted a bass fish. Okay. So I would bring whichever one of my 4 kids with me on the particular day, and I would want to go bass fishing. So I would rig them up a drop shot or a flick shake and just let them have at it. Okay. While I was focused on catching bass. Then I started to realize that they're having a miserable time because they're not catching anything. They don't care if I catch them or not. they're just having a miserable time. And so what wound up happening was I realized that all I have to do is get my kids to catch something, anything, doesn't matter what. Okay. So it would be rock bass, bluegill, whatever we can catch the most of in the shortest amount of time would be very advantageous for them. And then I wouldn't make them stay out all day. We would leave and go home when they're ready. Whether they lasted an hour or 3 hours or 2 hours, when they were done, we were done. Because what I didn't want them to do is hate to go in that boat. I didn't want them to hate to get out on the water. I wanted them to want to go. You know what I mean? So when this bonehead was little, he would catch gobies and put them in the live well and sit in the boat and play with the gobies. Hey, little goby guy, like Mr. Bill. Oh no, oh, you know what I'm saying? And so, and I didn't care. You know what I mean? Because he's entertained, he wants to be out there, and everything is good. You know what I'm saying? So the other thing we did a lot of was I took him to there's a small river close to home. I say close to home, it's about 25 minutes from here, but I would take the kids out there and we would wade fish in the summer. And well, Josh could tell you those stories.
I remember one specific time we were dropping in behind one of the stores that your buddy owned, and they had just like dredged out this massive like hole into the river. And I don't forget what they were doing specifically. I think it was something to do with the power lines, but whatever. And we were walking, and I was like, Dad, why don't we like fish right here? And you were like, you're not going to catch anything in there. And I took one cast into it and ended up catching a little smallmouth. And I was laughing. I never let you forget it that day. But no, the river was always a fun time for me because I had loved exploring when I was a little kid. I loved catching snakes. I loved catching frogs. I loved catching just wildlife. And so whenever we would go to the river and then I'd get to that point of boredom, I would always just kind of go off to the side, and there'd be these pools where there's water year round, but it's shallow, like deepest one's not going to be more than 12 inches deep. And you can go, and then I'll catch like crayfish and snakes and frogs that would be in them. And that was always a really fun time.
Yeah. So, I mean, I never made it complicated and always tried to advance them in the sport as they advanced. Like when Frankie fished when he was little, I was like, I am not putting a spinning rod in this kid's hand. He is bait casting all the way. No bait caster, no fishing. You know what I mean? And that was kind of wrong because
it's cold-hearted.
Yeah, it was kind of brutal. So what I wound up, like, my kids never had the push button, like the Zebco 202. They never had those. It was spinning rods and bait casters, period. But I remember when Frankie was little, he had a really bad habit of randomly tossing a rod overboard.
Like the whole rod,
reel, everything. He would just be fishing, and then all of a sudden he would just go whoo, launched, gone. Rod, reel in the water, gone. So the first couple times he did it, I realized that there's a problem. Because he's never touching any of my good stuff. Okay. So what I wound up doing was I got a, those like, it's like a phone cord. They're curled up.
Yeah.
They stretch. Okay.
Basically like
but it's like a bungee cord.
No, it's your kill switch cord, basically.
Yes. And so what I wound up doing was I tied that off to a cleat and then taped it on the bottom of the handle of the rod. So when he has the urge to throw a rod overboard, it's already tied up, and I don't give a crap because I can
Just
pull
put it
her
on a
back
leash.
in. So we were in this one place fishing, and we were in a marina, and there's a series of boat docks, and I'm going down this riprap wall, and I catch like a magnum sized crappie. I was slow rolling a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait. I catch a magnum sized crappie. So there's some dude working on his sailboat, and he's like, "Hey man, what is that?" I go, "It's a crappie." You know what I mean? I unhook it, I let it go, I cast out again, and I get a bass. And the guy on the bank on his sailboat's going, "Whoa, whoa." He's pointing at me, go, "Oh," and he can't say nothing. Well, what happened was Frankie launched a rod overboard. Okay. And so, so I catch the bass, and the guy's like, "That's a nice fish, but your son just threw your fishing rod in the lake." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I got it." I unhooked the bass. I walk over to the cleat, and I pull in the line, and I give Frankie the rod back. I'm like, "Stop throwing these things in the water." And the
Like
guy's
javelin throwing
yeah,
rods in
dude, like javelins. And so that dude on the bank is laughing his ass off, and he goes, "Oh, I've seen you been through this before." I said, "Yeah, it only took me about $150 worth of equipment to realize I gotta tie it off." You know what I'm saying? But
So, Josh, did your dad ever let you like reel fish in after he hooked them or anything like that?
Oh
Or was
yeah,
he always he did?
yeah, no, I remember vividly. There was one time we were out on Lake Erie, and I was super super young, and we were fishing, and I put my rod down, and he goes, "What?" And I go, "I just want you to hook him and then let me reel him in." And he just looked at me and like stopped for a second and go, "Okay." And so every time he hooked one, he would hand me the rod, and I would reel it in.
yeah, I did went on a sheephead fest.
Oh man, we can tear up the sheephead, man. I'll tell you what.
Because when they were little, they want to catch stuff. And so I could go out for hours and idle around looking for smallmouth. And in fact, the one day we were going to go smallmouth fishing, and I was idling around, and it was you and Frankie in the boat with me. And I'm idling around. I idle over this little ridge line, and they go, "Oh, look at the fish on the graph, Dad." I go, "Those are sheephead." And he's like, "No, they're not." I go, they're sheephead." And he's like, "No, they're not." And I said, "Okay." I spun the boat around. I go, "Drop it down there." So Frankie and Josh drop over the side of the boat, and it's like, and they're both doubled up. And of course, they're on big groaners. You know what I mean? So
They're on what?
big sheephead.
What'd you call them?
Groaners.
Like,
Yeah, because when you get them out of the water, they groan at you. They croak on you. So anyway, so they're start catching those things, and I'm like, "Guys, we're looking for smallmouth, guys," and they're both like, "Can't we just catch these for a while?" I'm like, "Have at it." So I grabbed my drop shot, and I started smacking sheephead with them, and we pounded the sheephead on this one spot till we couldn't catch them anymore. And then I go, "Could we go look for smallmouth?" And they're like, "Yeah, okay." So I'm idling around, and I don't know if you remember this because you were kind of young, but we were idling around, and Frankie, I go, "Oh, these are smallmouth." And Frankie goes, "Are you sure?" I go, "Yeah, they're smallmouth, dude." And so I shut the motor off, and Frankie immediately throws his drop shot out there, and all of a sudden he's like, I got him," and they come skying out of the water, and we started catching smallmouth, and then little by little, you wean them into the good fish, and we want to catch these more than we want to catch those, and stuff like that. And so it's a process with a child. It's a process. And the first process is you get them equipment they can handle and manage. You find a place they can catch fish at. Like the best thing is a farm pond when the bluegills are spawning, because then you can just give them a little tiny grub and have them pitch them on the beds, and they see the fish come and get them, and it's exciting for them. And then if they get bored, they can go catch frogs. They can do other things, and little by little their attention span towards the fishing end of it starts to grow.
Josh, did you ever have like your own stuff then, like your own tackle boxes? I know that's a big thing. All my buddies, I'm that age now where they've got kids and they're starting to fish, and I'm sure Frankie had to deal with this too. But like they're like, man, they're rifling through my stuff. And then some, but I got a couple buddies who are like, no, like they know that's off. It's just interesting how different, but they know that's off limits. And the ones who are serious, their kids have their own tackle box, and if they lose it, they have to replace it. And they're saving up money to buy their own tackle and key. Did you have your separate stuff, or were you like sneaking in and grabbing some of Frank's good stuff every now and then?
So it has been a little bit of both.
I can't wait to hear this.
When I was I mean, even still now, I have my own stuff, but if we go out on the boat and like dad allows me to use his weights and hooks and stuff if I break off, or I'm allowed to use the soft plastics, and he lets me use his stuff. But I definitely do have my own tackle. I have my own rods, my own reels. So, but it's all like hand-me-down stuff that dad has given me.
Well, you're an adult now, but like when I'm talking about like when you were a kind of like a kid or growing up, like, do you think it's good, Frank, to have your kids, like if you're listening to this and you have a kid who wants to get in, are you, is it a shared thing or separate thing, or what are your thoughts having been through the whole ringer now?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you what happened. This is funny. It could have been serious, but it's funny. My kids have always been involved in the fishing thing because of me. So since little babies, they know that if you pick up the crankbait, then there's hooks on it. The hooks hurt you. You know what I mean? So they pick the crankbaits up. They know how to hold a crankbait so they don't get hooked. And from a very early age, they knew the business end of lures and they knew the business end of a hook. So I would started them out on little boxes, like a little half of a Plano 3600.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have a couple of unique little things in there, maybe an inline rooster tail or a Meps, a little square bill, some hooks, worm hooks, some little tiny slip sinkers and stuff. And I never thought anything about it. And they would have their little box of lures. Well, one day, I don't know if it was you or Noah, Josh, but you brought your tackle box to school. I don't know. I think
I would do.
Yeah, I think it was you. So he brings his tackle box to school, and then we get a call from the school that Josh has a box with dangerous things in them, and everybody in the school is like, they're like, second graders.
Yeah.
And this kid's going to school with crankbaits and hooks and a box and everything, and the school calls. I'm like, what's the big deal? The kid's been around him forever. He knows what's going on. And she goes, it's not him, it's the other kids. I never thought about that. It's the kids that weren't brought up this way that would get a hook in them, wouldn't know. You know what I mean? Just wouldn't understand until something traumatic happened to them. So, my kids have always had stuff. They've always had tackle. They've always been around it. I never worried about them putting a hook in their mouth or, swallowing a sinker or whatever. I just never worried about that with them.
Quarter ounce of lead right down the hatch.
Yeah.
It's okay. It'll pass.
Here's a punch and wait. Goes real easy down one way, but it struggles the other way.
Soft entry.
But anyhow, yeah.
But I was just thinking because I talked to some of my buddies and they're all like, I want them to have their own thing. So like when they lose it or cast it, or now like you cast off a crankbait that you mowed a yard for, you learn how to tie a Palomar knot real quick. Because you got to replace it then, because that's like half the yard.
Right. And not only that, it gives them the value of what this stuff costs so they don't abuse it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing. Like, to me, rods and reels were the issue. Don't drag them on the ground. When we go to the river, don't drag your reel in the sand. You know what I'm saying? That was my biggest thing. don't sword fight with the fishing rods with your brother. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was that kind of stuff that I really didn't want them doing. The lures for me, um, I have a lot of tackle, so I wasn't so super concerned with that. The concern that I had was when I had um like my boat tackle. It's all 100% dialed in and 100% in order. Um, don't ever go in my boat and take a lure out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you need something, they're downstairs. You can go downstairs, but you have to tell me what you take. I always wanted to know because the thief over here, we have this one river we fish a lot, and the Bomber Square A is a money bait on this place, dude. Like I don't care when you go, you're going to catch them on the Square A. So I had painted some colors specifically for this river, and
I already know the story.
yeah, so you could finish the story if you want, since you know it,
Well,
since you did
I
it.
had gone to the river like a week prior, and I had caught like 15 or 20 on the little square A and that color specifically. And on what turned into my last cast, I I, I broke it off, and I was trying to look to see if it's gonna float up or not, but it must have been snagged too good, or the current just took it away, and I never found it. And I was like, oh man, that was my last one. So I had to go. I would decide I wanted to go back to the river a couple days later, and so I went downstairs and I found one that was hanging up on the rafter, and I took it, and I tied it on, and I went and I busted another 20 smallmouth on this little square.
Yeah. When he talks about grabbing it off the rafter, I have hooks where I hang all the lures
Right.
to dry them. So I'm painting them and he's taking them.
He was. I'm
And they're
pretty sure you
gone.
were in there painting more, and I knew that it was like good and ready to go because he had the hooks on it.
Yeah,
He
if
doesn't put the hooks on it unless it's good and ready to go. So I was like, oh, this one's got the hooks on it. Perfect. Then I just, reached up and took it.
yeah, he pilfers the goods.
I remember I was covering an Elite Series when this is a long time ago. So like Dean Rojas's son fishes collegiately now.
Oh, sweet.
This no joke. I was rooming with Dean covering the event. He's fishing, and he gets out for practice one day, and he goes to tie on a frog. No frogs. Dean Rojas and
No frogs at all.
Austin had been fishing on Havasu, and he just got in and grabbed Dean's frog box and threw it in a little John boat. Dean takes off for the Elite Series event. He's got to go back to the truck. He's got all his say. And that was when it was a strict "do not touch my stuff" policy. Following that, I remember that story correctly. But I mean, it was like his game day frog box
Oh my
was
God.
now in Austin's John boat.
That would be like them taking my DD22 box in the summer. I'd be like losing my mind.
Yeah. So here's the thing that I think is interesting. Frank, you're obviously ate up with fishing, not just bass fishing, steelhead fishing, paint,
Everything.
lures, everything. And you've got 4 kids. Josh, you're a high level baseball player, so you have split interests, right? So it's not just fishing. How is that dynamic when you have kids? Like it seems like Frankie seems to be like 100% ate up with bass fishing. You've got multiple interests. You like fishing, but obviously the baseball thing. How did you do that growing up as far as like direction and making sure you weren't like pushing it on your kids to enjoy fishing? And Josh, like what are your thoughts on that when you've got like a dad who's super ate up with it, but you also have something that you're really good at and another passion that you want to follow? I know that dynamic exists a lot. I mean, I'm 37. I have no kids, so I'm just going based off of other friends and life experiences.
Yeah, well, when he started pitching early on, okay, I tried to make as many games as I could possibly make to be there. Frankie kind of got screwed a little bit with that because when Frankie was younger, I was fishing full time and I was never home. Um, and I remember like yesterday, I missed a lot of things that Frankie had going on. I missed a fair amount that Noah had going on because when Noah was in high school playing football and everything else, I was still traveling.
How old's Noah?
Noah's what, 25,
Yeah.
Frankie's how old?
31,
And you're 21?
I'm 21.
and then my daughter's 22.
22.
And
well, you had it all going on there for like 10 years. That had to just be absolute chaos.
well, you got to thank my wife for that because she did most of it when I was gone. And so what happened was I missed a lot with Frankie, missed some with Noah, but Noah, I tried to make all his games. But it was tough. Sometimes I just wasn't here. And so what I realized was I would come back from, maybe I was on a 3-week hiatus with Bassmasters, and I would come home, and the first thing the kids want to do, especially Josh, Dad, let's go fishing. I mean, I'm backing up the driveway and he's running out, wants to go fishing. And the last thing I want to do is go fishing because I just been 3 weeks away. You know what I mean? And so with Josh, I kind of realized that I have to make the time when they want to go, because if I don't, we won't have that time. You know what I mean? And so I kind of made a mix. Like, his baseball was really important to him. His baseball was really important to me too. And I liked watching the games, especially when he was throwing, because when he was younger, I mean, he was farther ahead of a lot of pitchers when he was younger. So he was getting massive amounts of strikeouts per game, and it was fun. And then he would, of course, have bad games, just like you have bad fishing days. He would have a bad game or two where he gets shelled, and then of course we just make fun of him relentlessly. But but so we kind of tried to get the mix going. So with Josh, it was a lot of I want to go now. Well, we don't have time to go now. Well, but I want to go. Like one day he was watching some videos of guys punching. Remember when you got into the punching thing?
Yeah, I still love punching.
Right. So we don't have a whole lot of punchable lakes here. We do, but we don't. And I'm like, oh my God, Josh, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. By the time we get to the lake, blah, blah, blah. I'm making up excuses. And he's like, but it doesn't get dark until 9. So I'm like, okay, you want to punch? We'll go punch. So we go in the middle of the afternoon, we go punching, and then kind of plaster them, to be honest with you.
We busted up 18 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of good. The one day we went punching, we didn't have, dude, this is the funniest story. You could tell the story about when we were going
to the Ladue, or I mean, Inland Lake.
You're not supposed to mention a name of a lake.
We literally had a pre-show meeting, the only pre-show meeting in 77 ones that we've had, and the only rule was don't mention the names of the lake, Josh.
Yeah, that's
it wasn't when we were short lining.
No, I know we were going.
It was when we were going to go structure fishing on a lake, and all we brought with us was 2 cranking rods and 2 Carolina rig rods.
Right, and we got to the lake that we were going to go structure fishing at,
right.
and they had dropped the water like an absurd amount to the point where like we couldn't
get a boat in
at all. Like we couldn't even take it off and like carry it to the side. Like it was just, there was no water in the place.
Zero. So he goes, let's go.
I was like, let's go punching. And you looked at me like I was stupid. I go, what? We got 2 rods with braid.
No, not off the bank, a different lake.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So we go to a different lake and we cut off the Carolina rigs and we throw on the punching weights. And we just, we pull out and we just start punching. And all of a sudden, dad makes a punch and sets the hook, and his rod loads up to the cork. I mean, absolutely to the handle. And this fish goes straight underneath the boat from the grass. And I'm like, my eyes just like wide open, right? And I throw my rod down, I pick up the net, and dad's fighting this thing. And it literally, he's on one side of the boat and it's jumping on the other. And he can't do anything about it.
Because I'm
And
using my Carolina rig rod, dude. It's manhandling me. You know
well, it was also like a 7.5 pounder.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
like
was a big
it was a massive, and this is an Ohio 7.5 pounder. So I mean, this is not only an old fish, but like just a freaking stud of a bass. And then literally right after that, and I don't understand because this is my first time ever punching. I don't understand that you don't reel down and crack them like you do if you're flipping normally, right? So I flip in, and this was like 5 feet away from where dad just caught this 7-pounder. And I go to the top of the mat and I'm dangling it there for a second, and it just, you know what I'm saying? Just like that huge boil. So I'm like, oh, I got him. So I reeled down, and I mean, I had like this much line out. I have like this much line out now. And I set the hook as hard as I can, and 50-pound braid snapped so fast. It just, and I was like, oh, I looked at dad. I was like, what happened? He goes, why are you cracking them like that? I go, I thought I had to. I don't know. But from that point forward, I understood that it was just the minute you feel them, you just hit them.
Yeah,
No feeling down.
it was that day was so funny because we had picked a lake where we never done this before on it because it was close to the lake we couldn't get in.
Mhm.
And we had nothing of punchable. We had nothing right. So basically we're using, these softer Carolina rig rods for punching. But we slaughtered them that day. I mean,
Oh man,
we caught them.
we probably had 22 pounds.
Yeah, we smoked them. And then I said, okay, we'll get serious about this now. And so then we would go on punch missions where we would just pick lakes and go punch all day and nothing else. And we had some really good. I mean, we had some really good times. I remember the can
Oh man, I
pattern.
was dialed in on a beer can pattern. I'll tell you what, man. Every time there was a beer can in the mat, I pitched right to it and I caught one.
I swear. He goes, Dad, there's a beer can there. You think there's a bass by the beer can? Now it's on the matted grass.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
a can. I go, yeah, whatever. You do what you got to do, bud. You know what I mean? Because you know how
Mhm.
we're punching. You do. Well, he pitches by the first beer can and catches one. And so no kidding, man. We go down the mat a ways and there's another can.
Same type of beer. Like, is there a guy that's out trolling, just hammering them,
Yeah,
just slamming them, throwing them back?
You're throwing them back there.
So there's another can, and he's like, "What are the chances?" I go, "I don't know. Do it." He pitches by it, whack, and he gets another one. I'm like, "Oh shit, we just got to go look for cans." You know what I mean?
Huh.
It was so funny, man. It was obviously
A fluke.
a fluke, but it happened, and every can that he threw at, he got one.
I
Oh,
got
yeah.
a buddy who swears that one time he got on a duck foot pattern.
A what?
A duck foot pattern. Anytime he could get within casting distance of ducks on the water, he would cast to the ducks, and the bass were suspended under the ducks.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it? I mean, it could happen.
He was convinced. I mean, he to this day swears. I mean, I think he did really. He was in a little jackpot deal, like a Saturday club tournament, and he caught them all flipping duck feet, like live mallard duck feet.
I would get a duck lure.
But they were like underneath the. He could. I mean, there's no rationale for that, is there?
I don't know. I mean, you know what though? Why couldn't there be? Because if you think about it, all the redfish follow the rays when the rays are eating on the bottom and kicking up the stuff, and the reds are right behind them. Hell, dude, I was fly fishing on the flats one time, shuffling my feet and everything, and there's a dude on the bank, and I'm plowing speckled trout. I'm catching them like it's my job. And there's a dude on the bank, and he's like, "Oh man," he goes, "that's a nice redfish you got on your stringer." And I'm like, "I don't have a stringer." You know what I mean? I don't have a stringer.
Yeah, I got no fish attached to me.
So I look down, and there's this Mugambo red, dude. I'm shuffling my feet, and he's behind me, eating all the little crabs and whatever the hell I'm kicking up, right? So I got this, 9.5 foot fly rod. I turn it upside down. I've got just my tippet with my Clouser minnow on it, and I drop it straight down the side of my leg because I'm like, I'm gonna catch this thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as soon as I stopped moving and shuffling my feet, the red just swam away. You follow me?
Yeah.
So why wouldn't that happen? I mean,
yeah, ducks diving down and pick crayfish and little minnows that are messing with the sediment, I guess.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, I could see it happening. I
could be.
see it.
Have you fished any tournaments, Josh?
Yeah, me and Frankie used to fish all the fish tournaments all the time together.
Yeah, they signed me up as their alternate one time. And I'm like, guys, I told you I don't want to fish.
Well, I got summer baseball, and you need to have a second guy in the boat.
Yeah, exactly. So Josh gets called up to pitch. So he can't.
Yeah, and I got to drive 2.5 hours away down to Columbus, Ohio to pitch. And I'm like, hey, Dad. He's like, what? I'm like, there's not a chance that I make this tournament. And he was like, fine. So he called him and Frankie end up talking, and you guys ended up winning the tournament.
Yeah, but you and I practiced for it.
Yeah, that was an insane day, and I found out my new favorite technique.
And do not mention the lake.
What was your
my
favorite
technique for smallies?
What's that?
Carolina rig and smallies might be one of the funnest things to do in the world.
You're dangerously close to getting kicked off the show, Josh.
Not by me, but by Matt. All of a sudden, Josh's screen's going to go boop.
Yeah. I mean, all it is this. See, there he is. He's gone now. How's that Carolina rig doing now? And he's back.
That Carolina rig has probably one of my favorite techniques. Just
sell me on it. All right, tell me why I need the Carolina rig.
Well, if you don't Carolina rig, you're just not a good offshore fisherman. But so so we're practicing for this tournament, and we ended up getting so dialed in that it was any minor variation on this river ledge, you were going to sit there and catch every bit of 25 to 30 off of this one little area. But so, Matt, you're sitting there, cast out the Carolina rig, you're counting rocks, and then all of a sudden your rod loads to the cork, and a smallmouth is swimming off the other way direction, and you just lean into them, and it's a 2.5, 3 pounder, and it's just fun. I don't understand how you don't Carolina rig, man. It's so much fun.
It's kind of a principle.
On a lake where at the time of year 8 to 9 pounds would usually win the tournament, we were out there practicing, and we had 17 to 19 pounds.
Yeah.
Dad jumped one of the biggest smallmouth I think I've ever seen in my life to this day. I mean, it had to have been a 5+ pound smallmouth.
Yeah, it was a big one. And here we were off the lake by 12:30 in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. We got there at 8:30, and we were off the lake by 12:30. And I don't even know how many we caught, man.
Same kind of deal like you talked about a couple weeks ago with the current going, and you had a side and another side off the main channel where they were stacked up, and it looked like you were casting into nothing, but you had like a little sweet spot.
Oh, 100%, dude.
We didn't stay on the spots for long either. We would sit there, first 2 casts a piece, we would catch 4 fish, and then we would move on to the next spot.
So it was a pattern. You were running a pattern.
Yeah, just like the structure show we talked about a few weeks ago. Once I dialed in onto what they wanted on that structural element, that's what we did. We just went from spot to spot to spot. We dialed in on the pattern. We literally dialed in on the pattern at the boat ramp, if you want to know the truth.
That was so funny.
I launched the boat. I said, we're going to cast over here. You throw this C rig, I'll throw the DD22. So my first cast or second cast with the DD22, I catch one about 2.5 pounds or so. He fires out the C rig. He catches one right away. I let mine go. I'm throwing the DD22 because I want to establish, are they on the crank, are they on the rig, or are they on both? So he fires the rig out again and catches another one, and I'm throwing the DD22. He throws out the rig again. He catches another one. I go, well, that's that. I put the crankbaits away. We picked up the Carolina rigs and we just went and had at it. I mean, we literally had at it. So, I mean, it was a good, it's a good thing. And this is the beauty part. Working with your kids when they're little makes it 10 times more efficient and better when they become older because they're already in tune to the process. They're already in tune to the baits. They're still going to develop skill sets like pitching and flipping, for example. Josh had a hard time pitching and flipping in the beginning with the bait caster.
Mm-hmm.
As he fished more and as he got older, his pitching and flipping skills started to get good where we could go down the bank. And I know that if I'm on the right side of the blowdown, he's on the left side of the blowdown. You know what I mean? And we just fish. We don't have to worry about it. But it's the time before that happens that as an adult parent, you have to be extremely, extremely patient because here, perfect example, I have 4 kids. All my kids will fish with me. 2 of them love it. One of them could take it or leave it, and my daughter could take it or leave it. So I don't force it on them. If they want to go, we go. If they don't, we don't. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But with Frankie and Josh, if I say let's go, we're gone. There's no question about it. Noah will be like, well, I kind of wanted to do, or I kind of wanted to do. And then, or he'll go like, you want to fish tomorrow? And I'll be like, yeah, let's go. And we'll go. And about 1 o'clock, he'll be going.
Ready to bounce.
I think there's a game on tonight. I go, all right, we'll go. You know
but
what I
it
mean?
also sounds like you're one of the key things you talk about the punch in or going to a different lake or something. A lot of the day 4s that we do is, hey, here's how you go out and you hone your skills and you get better at this one technique. But it sounds like with Josh and with Frankie and stuff, although you're teaching them and you have a goal, versatile and not being afraid to change. And if you can go completely off your plan, let's say you planned on going and throwing DD22s on deep timber that day, but it's not going or it's super hot or something out there, but you see white bass schooling in the main river channel. The key is you go catch the dang white bass. Like have 100%. Fun, rod bend, bring things that you can be successful with and don't pound something into your kids to make them hate it.
Right. That's 100%. Like when we bass fish in the spring, I always have my crappie stuff with me. Always have it. Never. It's never not in the boat because if we're bass fishing and I get on crappies, we're catching crappies and we're catching them until I say we're done. You know what I mean? And that's just how it goes. Versatility. All my kids are very versatile. They can fish shallow, they can fish deep, they can fish finesse, they can power fish. Because they've been in the boat with me so many times, and now they're all, grown up. I'm not going to call Josh an adult yet, but they're grown up. So they can do it. They can do it. So we don't blink an eye. You know what I mean? We'll just go fishing. If conditions change, they change. We'll go carp fishing. We'll catch catfish. It doesn't matter. We just go fish.
I remember before I left for school, we were fishing out on Erie, and I had just blown out my arm, and I couldn't. I was like, all my reels I was holding with the arm that I had just had surgery on, And
Well, you got to tell them you had what kind of surgery.
oh yeah, so I had Tommy John surgery. I snapped my UCL in my throwing arm, and they took a ligament from my groin and put it into my throwing arm. So I got a nifty little scar. And
But you're
then
like back to good now.
no, but we're getting there.
You're close.
Close enough to warrant some scholarship offers, but not close enough to be able to
Get a
like
lot of
throw in the
film
league
yet.
right now. Yeah. But so I had just had the surgery, and I'm out of like the sling, and am I out of the brace that limited my movement at this point?
No, you still had the brace on.
Okay, so I still had the brace that limited my movement, but all my rods I'm holding in my right hand. And I remember we're out on Erie, we're smallmouth fishing, and I pitched my drop shot out, and we're basically vertical on these things, and all of a sudden, doom, and I set the hook, and it's a groaner, and I know it's a groaner right off the rip. And I'm like, I had to switch hands. I'm like, Dad, I can't hold it in my right hand. Like, what do I do? And so we get the fishing, and then he had to switch all my reels to the other side. But
Yeah, I
it was just one
switched
of
all
those
the
things
handles.
that it was like
I
weird.
hate that. I got a couple buddies that are like that, and I take them out, and they're always like, "Will you switch the reel handle?" And then I always like, "Oh, it drives me nuts." But anyway.
Yeah. I got a couple of friends of mine that can't use a bait caster to save their life. One of my dearest friends in particular, I actually bought him a bait caster and told him to learn how to throw this thing, or you're not bass fishing with me ever again. Because every time I go, and Matt, because and 99.9% of the people watching this show, you know how expensive braided line is.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to put 20 or 30-pound braid on a spinning reel so he could flip. Put forget crankbait fishing because I'm not dealing with all the line twist and blowing up all my fluorocarbon. So I just got so sick and tired of doing it. I said, here's a rod, here's a reel, learn how to throw it. If you can't throw it, you're not bass fishing with me. And that's that. That was the end of it. And so we walleye fish and crappie fish. And that's that in a nutshell.
I want to ask you, Josh. It's kind of interesting being 21. You mentioned like you told your dad, "Hey, I want to go punch," because you've seen it. You've kind of grown up in the YouTube and computer era, which I'm old enough too to where it wasn't around when I was that age. But how much of an impact has that had on your fishing and stuff like that? As being able to, from the time you were young, all this stuff was like readily available for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't say it had an impact on my fishing in the sense of I don't believe that I really learned a new technique from watching any of these guys fishing. Everything was taught.
What about your Huddleston box that Keith
gave me that?
Yeah, I know, Mr. I want to throw glide bait.
So I had a fascination with massive glide baits for a minute. And I have a whole box that our friend Keith gave me.
My buddy owns Powell Rod, so
okay.
He came over in between tournaments one time, and he's unloading his truck and getting his truck basically cleaned up to go to the next event. And of course, he pulls out this box of HUDs. And
from
Josh
Clear Lake and
100%, dude, 100%, because he lived in California at the time. And Josh is like, oh, and Keith goes, "You like these?" And Josh is like, "Oh my gosh!" He goes, "Here, take them," and gave him the whole box of them. You got that totally off of YouTube.
You're right. But most of the time, what would happen is I would see something and I'd go to you and I'd be like, "Hey, Dad, like, why don't we do this here?" Or like, "What do you think of this technique?" And then he would really break it down to me on like more of a in-tuned, in-depth level. And then we would sometimes, like, if it was a new technique for me, like punching, I convinced him to go do it, and we ended up having like a great time, and I learned how to punch. But YouTube, I will say though, the whole scene of fishing on YouTube definitely got me more into the sport because it allowed me to watch something that I loved and really enjoyed doing. And it was always at my fingertips, and I could watch what I wanted to watch when I wanted to watch it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Good stuff. We have to do any of the best meltdown stories that you've been in the boat. We covered that with Frankie, and then we also covered it with your cameraman,
Joe.
God, I'm horrible. I just forgot Joe's name and Frankie's name.
That's okay. It happened.
You got any good ones, Josh?
I have one where I almost had a meltdown, and it was because of Dad and Frankie. So we were out on a lake, and we were deep cranking, and
oh yeah. Hold on a second. I mean, you keep going. I gotta do this.
That's the home improvement guy.
And so we're deep cranking, and Dad would catch like a 4-pounder at the front of the boat working the trolling motor. Frankie would catch like a 3.5 in between us. And then I would cast out and boom, catfish. And I was like, man, what? So the whole day went on. Between the two of them, they probably caught 25 to 26 pounds of largemouth. And I caught every bit of 25 to 26 pounds of catfish.
Do you switch the front deck? Like would your dad let you guys switch up, or when you're both in the boat, how do you determine who gets to stand on the front with them?
The older one.
Like 100% of the time?
Yeah. That's just how it goes. Yeah. I mean, sometimes Frankie and I will switch, but it's from a very young age. It's been Frankie and Dad are going to be up at the front of the boat, and I'm going to be in the back.
Your dad's still muted. Frank's still muted. You got to unmute it, Frank.
My bad. Yeah, because I'm teaching him humility.
I know that's a big deal. Typically, when you get people like I do the Kurta Pro Bass Camp, right? And it's 2 high school kids, and like sometimes there's one kid that's like, I'm just fine in the back. No, I don't even want to be up front. But when you get 2 that are like kind of gung ho about it, it's like, hey, here's the deal. Every fish you switch.
Right. I do that with buddies that I fish with.
But not with Josh and Frankie. Just stick Josh in the back.
Well, what happens is a lot of times the boat control is a huge issue.
Yeah.
Because we do a lot of structure fishing. And I'm of the mindset that if we're out here bass fishing and we're structure fishing, I want to catch fish. So I'm going to keep us where we need to be to catch them. I will say cast over there. You know what I mean? You got to cast by that, towards that dead tree, and you'll hit the rock pile at the right place and stuff like that. But I want to make sure that we're on boat control mode. You know what I mean? Sometimes if you get turned around offshore a little bit and change that position, you got to refine the fish. You have to refine the positioning of the fish, and I don't like to lose it once I get on them.
It's talking about finding information online and stuff. I am reading your profile, Josh. It says you want to be a crime scene investigator. Is that still?
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
It's
that's like just walking into the carnage, right? And then trying to figure out what happened.
Well, I'll tell you what. Actually, interesting story about that is that like was my major going into my freshman year of college, and obviously I'm playing baseball, but COVID happens, and so I go home, and in the classroom, when you're looking at pictures of someone who's been shot 7 times, and you're like have to analyze like the crime scene and how it happened, it's one thing because you leave it in the classroom. We had COVID, and they sent us home, and I was in my room, and on my laptop, I'm staring at pictures of dead bodies of people that have just been brutally murdered. And it honestly made the class kind of difficult because I was like, I don't want to be looking at this on my computer in my like space of my room,
Yeah.
It was weird. But yeah, no, crime scene investigation. That was I still want to do it? Sure.
No, you don't. No, all you want to do is pitch. Don't
honestly, if baseball was to end for me tomorrow, I'd probably I'd go and become a firefighter.
Okay. So what's like the baseball path? Because I know that there's a million different avenues to get to where you want to go? Like, what is the path for you right now? Like, if people wanted to follow your journey, then just like they follow Mark Jeffrey's bowling journey through the senior PBT.
Right.
So I've been in junior college so far. That's how my baseball career started. It's been in the JUCO realm. And I just graduated from Prince George's Community College in Maryland. And right now, I have a few offers to continue to play. It's just really, I don't know where I'm going to end up right now, so I can't really tell anybody how to follow me as of right now.
Okay, but like, are we talking like minor leagues, independent leagues, other like colleges?
It'll be collegiate still.
Okay.
I still have 3 years of eligibility, so
okay.
Yeah.
That was the only benefit from COVID.
They gave me my year back, and then I blew out my arm the next year, and then so they gave me that year back. So,
right,
going into my fourth year of college,
you'll be a 30-year-old college pitcher.
Pretty much.
Hey, Josh, you got to listen for the knock on the door.
Okay.
Because the gas guy will be
Well,
here.
we're almost an hour in here. What do you got going on now, Frank?
Oh, our gas meter's in the basement, so the gas guy's got to come down here and read it. And every time he's supposed to be here, I always forget, and I'm doing something. and then I'll go downstairs. I'll come out of my office because my office is upstairs.
Right.
I'll go downstairs. There'll be a note on the door. Hey, nobody was home. Call and make another appointment.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. And then my wife yells at me when she gets home. You had one thing to worry about today. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right.
Well, I like these kind of a little bit behind the scenes. You get a different aspect of it. It's one thing, breaking down maps and stuff, but yeah, a little bit of the human element to it and realize a little bit more about what it's all about.
Family, man. You know what I mean? You got to take care of your family first.
Unless they can't hold the trolling motor at the right angle or they throw rods in the water.
Then they're not on the front deck. They're just not on the front deck.
Tell you what, I learned how to fish behind you guys pretty well.
Oh yeah, but I'll leave you stuff. I do. I leave them stuff to catch fish.
That's good stuff.
I'm not that mean, unless he makes me mad. Like when he used to text with one of his girlfriends all day. We'd be fishing and they'd be on their phone all day like that. And I'd be like, you can't catch them like that, dude. And then I would get really
You can if you're Carolina rigging because there's absolutely nothing to Carolina rigging. You just cast it out. You can text away. You could text 4 or 5 buddies and you're efficiently fishing it like you're supposed to.
That is false.
Yeah, you just aren't a good Carolina rig fisherman, man.
That is false.
You get a sit-down chair and have YouTube pulled up on your laptop and you're texting people on your iPhone, and heck, you're fishing a Carolina rig.
The craziest thing is I think that Carolina rig fishing is one of the most in-depth ways of fishing.
That's because you were taught by the master.
Yeah, I understand what's going on.
That's great.
On that note, Josh, thanks for hopping on. We've got half of the Scalish family on BTL, over half because we've had the cat on too.
The cat has made an appearance.
I think we heard the cat a little bit earlier in the show.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, he was yelling right at my feet, walks up to me and starts
the fishing cat that you rescued and then stuck in the hotel room for like 3 days.
we held
it's that cat, right?
We held it hostage.
You lured it into a low-budget hotel room
with a can,
and then trucked it back to Cleveland Heights.
Yeah, they unclipped the collar in Alabama, so they didn't have to take it back.
Cat on a collar.
That's it, man.
All right, this has been a family edition of Day 4 with Frank and Josh Scalish. Day 4, number 77. Back live with Day 4, number 78 next week. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
See ya.